I am Dawn Matheny. I'm the executive director of Veriditas. And in conjunction with the Labyrinths Society, we are offering this webinar as a part of our higher education initiative to promote the use of labyrinths in higher education settings. So I'm going to turn this over to our panel moderator, Irene Plunkett, who came to me probably 6-7 years ago and wanted to see us, Veriditas, work with bringing labyrinths into higher education. So over to you, Irene.
Thank you, Dawn, and welcome everybody. We are really pleased to see you all and to see the geographical and other diversity that's represented here. So again, welcome. We're really pleased that you are here. Today, we have 6 speakers, 6 panelists, and each presenter will share with you his or her work and something about his or her unique vantage point and relationship to a college or university community. So we have a lot of different vantage points that we're able to show you today. As always, we hope today's speakers will inspire you to consider creating a new labyrinth on your campus, permanent or temporary, or perhaps reinvigorating one that already exists. And as always, we remind you there are many ways to engage this work, so many ways. Each community, each college, each campus has different gifts and presents different challenges and opportunities. And this is an idea that today's panelists will demonstrate fully. So welcome again, and we hope you feel inspired. Our first presenter is Julia Van Fleet.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Julia Van Fleet, and I am currently a student at Lesley University. And the title of my presentation today is Amplifying Perspectives, Navigating the Labyrinth Through the Student Voice. So I'm mostly just going to be talking about my experience with the labyrinth as a student and how walking it has been a big part of my journey throughout my educational years. And I interned with Veriditas in the fall of 2022, and I'm currently serving on the Higher Education Committee as well as on Veriditas Council. During my internship, a majority of my work was focused on finding ways that Veriditas and the Labyrinth could connect to students. And I assisted Lars in a couple of the student trainings that were offered just by bringing in some mindfulness techniques and just kind of being a student voice for them. I'm currently working towards a master's degree in mindfulness studies through Lesley University, and I'm set to graduate at the end of the year. I received bachelor's degrees in environmental studies and economics at Eckerd College, and I graduated in 2020 from there. And I have been walking labyrinths with my mom since I was 12 years old, and I have continued to use the labyrinth throughout my college years. Since I graduated with my undergraduate degree during the pandemic, I wasn't able to participate in a live graduation. Rather, our graduation was a Zoom meeting online, and I wasn't really given the opportunity to kind of have closure for my college years. And so when my mom and I went up to my college to move everything out of my dorm, we decided to walk the on-campus labyrinth to signify the end of my education at the school. And I had walked this labyrinth when I first started college on move-in day, my freshman year, and I thought it would be powerful to end my education the same way. And my mom had suggested that I walk into the labyrinth, remembering my time at college, and I walked into the future on my way out. And at this point, the future seemed very uncertain for me because we just witnessed the start of the pandemic. But for me, walking the labyrinth allowed me to trust in my future and center my thoughts. And this is just a picture of the on-campus labyrinth. It's kind of in the middle of a little community garden at Eckerd College. So my mom and I continued to walk the labyrinth to signify important life events. and I would walk it to mark the start and end of each semester. I also walked it at Garfield Farms, which is an organic farm that I interned at during my undergraduate work. And I had a life event happen at school, which led me to take a semester off from my undergraduate college. And I actually traveled with my mom to Petaluma, and that's where she received her advanced facilitator training. And I spent a lot of my time there just reflecting and walking the labyrinth. And I think it was just a beautiful way for me to just transition into this semester off that I was taking. And for me, the labyrinth has been a touchstone throughout my educational years as a place for me to center myself amidst all of the busyness that being a student brings. I would even use my finger labyrinth during study breaks to center myself and refresh my mind. Even though I'm currently enrolled in a virtual program through Lesley University, I take time to walk the labyrinth that is near my house, as well as use my handheld labyrinth between studying sessions. The labyrinth brings me a sense of calm and presence, which is needed when I get caught up in my schoolwork and my other obligations. And I have noticed that I come out of my time with the labyrinth with a new mindset, ready to take on my next task with some renewed energy. I continue to walk the labyrinth to mark important milestones in my life, as well as walk it to center myself just during my normal school days. And I actually walked the labyrinth this past Monday to signify the start of my new journey, which is an environmental education internship with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. And this is just a picture of a labyrinth at one of our nearby churches that I spent a lot of time on growing up and just walking. And there's actually a full rainbow over at one of those times. I believe that the labyrinth has been an integral part of my life as a student, as well as my life as a young adult. And these are just some other pictures of the labyrinth in Naples that I walk a lot. And there's me and my mom on the one that's right near my house. I'm so thankful for having been introduced to the labyrinth and having the opportunity to walk it throughout my educational years. And I just wanted to thank you all for your time and mindful attention.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's really powerful, and we're really pleased to start this day with a student perspective. Thank you. Dee Acker is our next presenter.
Thank you so much. And this is a labyrinth that's behind me, and this is the one at University of California, Merced. And I'm going to talk about choosing a labyrinth design as a community building activity. So basically, I started, this is the labyrinth at the University of California, Merced, which is out in the Central Valley. And I want to say the first word is intention when you're looking at a labyrinth. So I've served at the University of California for over 30 years in various different roles. And right now at UC Santa Cruz, I serve as the university ombuds. And I'm finding that labyrinths are really good for helping people do some mindful attention. And when they're very stressed, to walk through, as Julia mentioned, at the beginning of one's career and the end of one's experience. And building a labyrinth is very different. What I found at UC Merced, again, it's in the Central Valley. There's no other labyrinths for people to even know what a labyrinth is. So I did a lot of educating of the campus. I wanted to kind of give some tips. The number one thing is to really, I say, create a buzz. So create a buzz on the campus about what is a labyrinth. If you already have a labyrinth, that's a lot easier to do. If you don't, and then also to find, number two kind of tip is to find someone at a very high level at the university who could be a sponsor or a co-sponsor. And they really don't have to do anything except support your efforts in getting the word out, basically. So that's what I did at UC Merced. I had the associate chancellor. We would walk around campus. She had also walked labyrinths at other places and knew. And so we'd look at different sites on campus, which was pretty fun to do. And then I actually started a committee. So we called it a stakeholder committee. And I brought together people at all different levels and really think creatively about the stakeholders group. I'm starting one again now at UC Santa Cruz. So I'm starting the process all over again. And I would suggest people in the planning department. So a lot of campuses, ours is a public institution, and I'm not sure how it is different for private institutions, but really start with a planning person and get their buy-in. Undergraduate and graduate students, we did the planning during COVID. And the undergrad students really wanted to kind of create a memorial for COVID for people that survived it and the journey around it. And then staff groups as well. So we have staff assemblies, and they actually had some funding that they could contribute. So did the associated students. And faculty senate is super important, particularly faculty who might incorporate this into their curriculum. People from arts, psychology, we had someone from public health, and then student peer coordinators. So there's oftentimes health coordinators, health peers, people doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. It's really, I think, essential. And we actually had our student regent during the ceremony give a nice presentation about inclusion and how this helps everyone to feel like they have a safe space on campus. And then people will start coming to you. People that have a passion for Labyrinths, I found, will start coming to you, including the counseling. So the first meeting was really about education of the stakeholders group. And you might bring a slideshow. I'm going to share a little bit of the screen. This is actually Lars, who gave a presentation. This was during our, what we call it, dedication ceremony, but he was with us all the way and talked to the group about what is the intention of why you want to bring a design or a labyrinth to the campus. And then people can talk about it, and he gives a whole kind of historical perspective around labyrinths. And let's see what else. And then we also, you could bring in, we did a temporary labyrinth. So that's super helpful. So people can actually see, feel, walk it. You can do, there's many different ways, chalk, cornstarch, beads, all sorts of things, or do a pop-up sort of labyrinth. And I really want to, accessibility people as well. We're bringing those people in to look at what space would make it accessible. So we do that from the beginning instead of having that be an add-on to the very end. And I think that's super important to do. And it's sometimes hard on campuses that they're not always that accessible. Oh, and that's just yesterday at our cabinet meeting. So that's the chancellor on down. I had bought stickers just from Amazon. They're little labyrinths, finger labyrinths. And I passed them out to everybody. And the excitement was so cool. And they thought, oh, it's a maze. I'm like, no, it's not a maze. You know, they feel like that, so they could actually touch it and feel it and all that. So that's that creating the buzz that I was talking about. So I bring those stickers now wherever I go, and people really seem to want them. So
thank you, Dee. Really practical, really appreciate the piece about inclusion of and accessibility as well. Thank you, Dee. Our next presenter is Frank Fain. Frank.
I'm Frank Fain. I've been a hospital chaplain, been involved with, I've been in the interfaith community for probably 35 or 40 years. And I'm going to talk about how to use the labyrinth in interfaith dialogue. And this comes out of what Dee said a moment ago about using it and positioning it in work and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so my current work is with Rutgers University. We're in the process of building a labyrinth. I am also the vice president for outreach of the Labyrinth Society, and also our education chair, Tim Tenclay, is here with us this morning. One of the things in using the labyrinth is I think the labyrinth journey helps us discover our shared human and spiritual stories. And I think the cornerstone of interfaith dialogue, as I see it, is helping us take a look at those two stories and how they interact. The labyrinth enables us, walking the labyrinth helps us to have a shared space to discover these stories. By the way, that picture is a picture of a labyrinth at Rollins College in Winter Park, where I was the project manager, program manager for 5 years. And that's the labyrinth we built a couple of years ago that we dedicated. It's also a legacy labyrinth. And then walking the labyrinth pattern invites our feet and our hearts to be transformed through what I call the 3 Bs. I want to talk about that in a minute, but I want to share this particular quote from Mark Nepo, because interfaith dialogue, like the Labyrinth, is a pilgrimage. And I love this definition of pilgrimage from Mark Nepo, a mindfulness a person. To journey without being changed is to be a nomad. To change without journeying is to be a chameleon. To journey and be transformed by the journey is to be a pilgrim. We carry a center that is always returning. And I love this particular quote too. It talks about stories move in circles. And it says, they don't move in straight lines, so it helps to listen in circles. There are stories inside stories, stories between stories, and finding your way through them is as easy, as hard as finding your way home. And when you're lost, you start to look around and to listen. And one of the things that I always do when I'm doing interfaith labyrinth walks is encourage people to let the labyrinth experience help them listen to their own story and then the story of the people walking with them. I love this quote from a Muslim friend of mine. Pilgrimage to the house of God is a duty towards God upon humankind for all those who can find a way there. One of the most fascinating experiences of my life a number of years ago was doing a series of labyrinth walks at iftars when a Muslim community breaks the fast during Ramadan. And many of these Muslim people that I was working with had not been exposed to the labyrinth. And their embrace of the labyrinth as a common form of pilgrimage and story not only fit that occasion, but fit their concept of listening to our shared stories. It was a wonderful experience, and I look forward to doing that again soon. Let's talk about the 3 Bs. And some of you who have seen me present on inclusion and equity will notice some of this, but I've reframed this to talk about it in terms of interfaith dialogue. One of the things I think the Labyrinth does in terms of interfaith dialogue, it allows people to be themselves where they are. And it's all about our life's journey, about the people who touch us. And the Labyrinth offers a safe and welcoming space where all persons, regardless of race, religion, gender, ethnicity, culture, sexual orientation, etc., may experience the healing and transforming power of its path to embrace their own unique human story. If there's anything I've discovered in holding interfaith labyrinth walks, it's discovering our common story. I just did a series using these slides at Rutgers University about a month or so ago. And when we did the labyrinth walk, I presented this to the folks, and I was amazed that we had people from all over the university and their sense of shared story, even when their differences of faith and other differences enabled them to be themselves in this community, which is a key part when you're doing interfaith dialogue. One of the things that I think is important about the Labyrinth is the Labyrinth gives us a sense of belonging. As we mindfully attend to its stories, we begin to see that we open ourselves to our story and the story of other people. We go with our own spiritual longings, but we also are able to hear the spiritual longings of other people as we are walking together. And one of the things, and this especially comes out in the collective sharing we do, is we begin to see that even though there may be significant differences in how we worship, how we view God, how we view all kinds of issues, we discover a larger, more collective story that welcomes us, and we can find ways to belong to that story. I love that illustration too. And I think it's very important that the Labyrinth does that. the labyrinth becomes that vehicle to do that. And then the final B is the labyrinth creates a place of beloved community. And beloved community, as Martin Luther King said, it's the labyrinth path invites us to a community where our feet and hearts weave us together into a community dedicated to a common story that we can share. And this beloved community pulls us across our differences. And as the illustration says there, someone made a circle to keep me out, so I made a bigger one to include us all. And the labyrinth becomes that place. And in all of my work in interfaith dialogue, the labyrinth has been that place, whether I'm working with Jews and Christians, Muslims, people of no faith. The labyrinth becomes that place where we can come together. And finally, this quote from Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who was the chief rabbi of Great Britain. Though my faith is not yours and your faith is not mine, if we are each to light our own flame, together we can banish some of the darkness of the world. And I believe the labyrinth helps us to do that when we structure our walks around these 3 Bs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. That's certainly timely. And for the reminder about pilgrimage and community and holding space for all kinds of differences and commonality. Our next presenter is Catherine McLean.
Good morning, everyone. We've heard a lot of really precious things already this morning, and I just invite you to take a deep breath. We've been listening, so take a couple deep breaths as we take this all in. My name is Catherine McLean. I'm zooming in from Southeast Florida in the US, and I'm a member of the Veritas Higher Education Committee and serve on the Labyrinth Society board with the research committee. And I've done some doctoral research at McCormick Theological Seminary on the role of the labyrinth in building beloved community. And I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. The title of my presentation is Alumni Engagement in the Labyrinth. And in order for me to share this, what I'd like to do is tell a story about it. I'm also an alumnus of Flagler College, which is a small liberal arts undergraduate school in St. Augustine, Florida. Several years ago, I was contacted by a fellow alumnus about creating a labyrinth on campus in memory of a beloved family member of theirs. The family donated the funds to create the labyrinth. I was a small part of the coordinated effort to build a permanent outdoor labyrinth at the college. The builders were John Ritter and Chuck Hunter and Amanda Litz. The labyrinth is a peaceful, walled garden directly behind a historic building house that houses the Alumni Association offices. Prior to the permanent labyrinth being built, I was asked to teach some sessions for the college's spiritual disciplines course about the labyrinth. It was part of the youth ministry program there. And I brought my portable world peace labyrinth and finger labyrinths for the class to experience. Prior to the permanent labyrinth being built, also there was energy on the campus to maybe include these courses in other disciplines within the college. This response from the students was very positive, and they began to use the labyrinth as a place of focus and solace and quiet and discernment, processing and building community. The seniors who were about to graduate had profound experiences as they reflected on their college journeys and looked beyond graduation. Following the permanent labyrinth build, the labyrinth was even more integrated into the curriculum of the college in the psychology department, the philosophy department, religion and youth ministry departments. Fast forward to 2023. I was at a memorial service in St. Augustine of a beloved former Flagler College professor, Reverend Dr. Mattie Hart, who loved walking the labyrinth with her students, her former students. I spoke with the alumni who donated the funds for the permanent labyrinth, and we talked about having her former students come together and create an annual memorial walk in her memory during alumni weekend, since most of her students were from a former era. So, to my surprise, a few weeks ago, when I received the invitation to Alumni Weekend at Flagler College, it stated in the invitation this quote, reconnect, this is the theme, reconnect, reminisce, and relive your college days. Create new memories and celebrate the enduring spirit of Flagler College. It reminded me of the Veritas phrase, release, receive, and return, that is taught to those who are newly walking the labyrinth and seeking some guidance. So here's another set of our words to help gently guide a labyrinth walk for alumni, possibly. Reconnect, reminisce, relive, celebrate enduring spirit. So this got me pondering about how the campus labyrinth might be increasingly meaningfully engaged and offered to alumni who visit the campus from time to time or annually. Alumni weekend events usually include cocktail parties, surf contests, golf tournaments, award ceremonies, state of the college talks by administrators. But I was intrigued by offering a contemplative, reflective experience with the labyrinth for those who returned to a very formative place in their lives. Offering labyrinth walks is a way to invite alumni to experience another way, to reconnect, to reminisce, to relive, to create new memories, and celebrate the enduring spirit. Labyrinth experiences can happen at other times with alumni during the year, not just on alumni weekend. Perhaps an alumnus could offer a walk for students or faculty or administrators. Perhaps as a part of a half-day retreat for alumni or staff. Perhaps alumni could be trained to be labyrinth facilitators and host new arriving students in their first week on campus, connecting alumni and students and offering them a safe contemplative space to help them begin their new college journey. The Labyrinth donor and the director of Alumni Relations Department and I are in conversation as we plan the Memorial Labyrinth Walk for Dr. Hart and other walks to support and encourage alumni to connect to one another, the campus, and to students and faculty. There is also a new interfaith center on campus, and so that will be another connecting point for alumni and students. So that's a snippet of what I think could be many ways to engage the labyrinth with college and university community alumni. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your ideas, and thank you all for being present here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. I think that that's an interesting perspective, and alumni are sometimes the invisible part of communities, and to think about linking them with incoming students via the labyrinth, creative. Thank you. Our next presenter is Katja Marquardt.
Well, thank you for having me today. I am very excited to share a bit about a travel tour that I did with a co-leader several years ago with students on our campus. So I'm Katja Marquardt. I'm a professor in the interior architecture program at the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point campus. And we're a 4-year liberal arts university in the University of Wisconsin system. And we have a teaching focus on our campus. So unlike the flagship University of Madison, that's a research-based campus, we are primarily teaching focused. We don't currently have a labyrinth, but that is about to change. So it's been fun to try and find different ways over the years to introduce students to labyrinths and to build some excitement around it. So the study tour that we took was focused on symbols, patterns, and sacred spaces. So it was a 3-week study tour. It was very fast-paced. It had an emphasis, like I said, on symbols, patterns, and sacred spaces. And my co-leader was a professor in the graphic design program who also had an interest in sacred spaces and had some familiarity with labyrinths. But the students who attended the tour had no familiarity with labyrinths whatsoever. We planned several labyrinth sites into our itinerary, along with a few other places that you'll see. We toured in Ireland and Scotland, and we had a total of 21 students with us, primarily undergraduate students from our various programs on our campus, and we had one mother who attended with her daughter, and that was a lot of fun. So I thought I would start by focusing on just some of the labyrinth-specific sites that we went to, and to bring this into some sort of geographic framework. We flew into Dublin, and we stayed there for about 5 days, using that as our center from which we then took excursions and toured various sites. And then we drove across the country to Limerick and then did the same thing. And that helped save some of our costs. So if any of you are interested in doing study tours with groups, one of the things that you can do as a cost-saving measure is to base out of a larger city and then do some day trips. So we had to do that, which did limit to a certain extent some of the labyrinths that we could see. So the ones we visited in Ireland were, we started with the labyrinth at the Dublin City University that you can see on the bottom. And this was a really wonderful space to do our opening ceremony for the trip, to introduce students to the labyrinth. And we also connected with the chaplain at that university, and they were very gracious and hosted us for the morning, gave us some historical context to their labyrinth, and really set the stage for our tour. We also went to Glendalough, which is a historic monastic site, and they have both an outdoor labyrinth that can be walked, you can see up above, and then that is also the location of the Hollywood Stone, where there's a carved labyrinth. So those were the 2 main sites that we visited that were labyrinth specific in Ireland. We then flew over to Scotland and landed in Glasgow and did a similar approach. We based out of Glasgow for a few days. We then went over to Oban and then up into Inverness and then down into Edinburgh. And along the way, we again tried to connect with labyrinth sites that were along that travel journey. So we had a day where we went to Dunere Castle in the top left. It's a lovely labyrinth that's right on the sea. We did a 3 islands tour of Iona, Staffa, and Mull, and we did have a very short time on Iona. Some of us attempted to get to the labyrinth across the island and made it back in time, but we didn't have a lot of time to spend there. We had planned to stop at a unique labyrinth at St. James the Great and Dollar. It's an interesting pattern that is squeezed into this narrow space. And due to a bus failure, we unfortunately had to cancel that stop. And then we finished at the University of Edinburgh, and that labyrinth was a really great space, again, to bookend our travel, do our closing ceremony. And I have a photo of that on the bottom, and they have a lovely entrance with some signage and a finger labyrinth that can be used, of course, if you don't want to physically walk the labyrinth with your feet. Along the way, we built in other sacred sites and activities. And this was a really important part of the journey because it offered time for students to really sit and collect their thoughts and to think about what they were experiencing. Part of our requirements for these students was to maintain a daily journal. So they did sketching, they did journaling along the way. We visited various sacred sites, passage tombs, stone circles, and this wonderful land art place called the Craigwick Multiverse, which if you ever end up going into Scotland, I highly recommend as a visit. And they were fantastic and hosted us for a lunch that day. And we just got to explore this space. It was really phenomenal. And again, just some additional pictures of things we integrated. So hiking and walking and this theme of pilgrimage and journey. And I threw in this picture on our boat tour because it was not all smooth sailing. We had wonderful weather, but we did have some slightly rough seas the day we had our boat tour. So what's a travel trip without some rough seas, right? And this is just an example of one of the students' sketchbooks that she allowed us to document. She just had some wonderful sketches, but also some written insights, just documenting her experiences. And this was a student who was, she had just graduated right before joining the tour with us. And so she was really well positioned in many ways to think about some of the internal journeying that she was going through and this idea of new beginnings and where her life was going next. And she really wrote some lovely things in her journal about that. And the Labyrinth really was a powerful part of that for her. So just some final thoughts and tips I thought I would throw together. If anyone is interested in doing this type of trip, it took a lot of planning. We started planning this trip at least a year in advance. And I did all of the contacts for a lot of our sites, and in particular, a lot of the Labyrinth sites. And so I leaned heavily on resources available like the Worldwide Labyrinth Locator, social media, and then the personal network. So reaching out to people I knew in those countries, asking who they knew, who might be people to connect with. Every place there was a Labyrinth site, we connected with the person listed as the caretaker or a possible person who could be identified to help us. We made sure to reserve spaces ahead of time in case there were events that were planned. We wanted to coordinate our itinerary around that. We had to consider transportation, from site to site. It takes time to get various places. Of course, incidentals happen. I mentioned the bus breakdown. Building in time to reflect is really important with this type of journey, and the students really got a lot of value out of that. And we also did some pre-trip meetings as well as some post-trip wrap-ups to prepare the group and to also bring everything together and close it for them. So it was a really exciting trip, and I hope to be able to do it again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Katja. I'd like to say something profound, but actually what comes to mind is really lucky students. That just sounds like a really well done and creative, obviously bringing in the labyrinths and the carvings and the multi-dimensional possibilities there with travel. Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Jan Sellers. Jan.
Hello, everybody. I'm here as primarily as a researcher and writer. I'm retired from the University of Kent, England, where I worked in student learning development and in creative campus initiatives. And it was particularly during my last 7 years there that I was really privileged to spend a lot of time developing the university's Labyrinth project and taking that into the wider higher education community. I'm fascinated by the sheer diversity of possibilities that labyrinths in higher education offer. And that's what my focus is going to be for the next few minutes. I'm going to introduce you to two key resources that illustrate the huge diversity of possibilities in how you can use labyrinths on campus or indeed in other higher education settings. So without further ado, the first is a book called Learning with the Labyrinth, Creating Reflective Space in Higher Education. This was published by Palgrave Learning and Teaching. That's their Learning and Teaching in Higher Education series. And to the best of my knowledge, this remains the only academic book that has a specific focus on teaching and learning with the Labyrinths, with 30 contributors from all sorts of settings around the world, but all of them with a higher education focus. This includes people getting started, it includes research features, and it includes ideas to deepen and stretch your own practice in working with labyrinths at your university or college. So, for example, Jeff Sayward here, in the book, he talks about the fact that you do not need a fully paved permanent labyrinth to get started or to engage students. And what we've got here is a very engaged group of drama students who were then cheerfully joined by a group of primary school teachers who wanted to work with the labyrinth in completely different settings. And finally, we were joined by a visiting social work academic from another university who also wanted to learn about this. So quite an example of higher education community building, as well as, frankly, a very useful technique. And then a labyrinth walk that I facilitated for a conference. This was at St Mary's University College, a conference on spirituality and reconciliation. But the point that I want to make is that labyrinth walking, as you've already heard today, relates so powerfully to journey that a labyrinth walk can help to enhance any conference and any beginning. So we can use labyrinths during student orientation, we can use them at the beginning of particular courses, and we can also use them as students transition to further studies or to the launch of their careers, and indeed into the uncertain futures. Labyrinths is a safe space for all of us. Having worked on the book, I then found that I was finding out about more and more and more labyrinths in higher education. So this led to a research project on permanent and landscaped labyrinths in universities and colleges. And this research is freely available to you. It takes the form of 2 PDF documents, and it is available to read or to download from my own website. I thought that you might be interested, as a predominantly American audience, not exclusively, in the sheer spread of permanent and landscape labyrinths at universities and colleges in the United States. Mm-hmm. So the darker the colour, the more labyrinths are to be found in educational institutions in these settings. A tribute, I think, to the way in which enthusiasm has built and is still building for this really valuable area of work. Taking a global picture, I've found labyrinths in universities and colleges in 17 countries so far, which include Canada, Norway, Switzerland, the Philippines, India, Indonesia, Australia, Canada, and more. And it is delightful to see several international visitors with us today, as well as myself, from London in England. So where are you going to find this index? Well, here's the homepage for my university. And if you click on the publications button, which you can see there, then that's going to take you to the two documents. The first of which is a comprehensive introduction, which goes into some detail about the research issues and the research basis that I drew on for this. Secondly, we have the index itself. And this is quite a substantial document, 136 pages, but that's because it includes both a user guide, an index key, and information about, so far, 287 different labyrinths in different settings. The settings are hugely diverse. University arboretums, remote field study centres, equally remote agricultural extension projects, beautiful campus labyrinths, and smaller garden, or in some cases larger garden labyrinths at the heart of campuses, retreat centres, lots of different places, anywhere that university students can be found, anywhere that was part of a university setting is what I looked for. So to wrap up, what can you actually acquire? What can you learn from the index? Well, most of the information is in the public domain, but is gathered here together for you in one place for you to browse. So first of all, making connections, looking for who else is working with the labyrinth, perhaps in your state or your region, perhaps in your own field of interest. Looking for ideas. What are other people doing with labyrinths? What was the original purpose of their labyrinth? What sort of funding did they acquire in order to get that labyrinth started? And gleaning ideas for your own practice. So here we have, I've only got time for one example, and I've chosen the University of Delaware. This is a relatively new labyrinth, and you can see here the key information that I've used on all of the entries where I could obtain it. So we've got the university's main address and website, some information in the central column about the labyrinth, including the evidence that led me to include it. The purpose of the labyrinth, in this case, it is a beautiful reflective space for students, staff and the community, an initiative of doctoral students, a labyrinth created to honour the silent teachers, those who have given their bodies to the College of Health Sciences for research. A profoundly moving motivation for installing a labyrinth. And I'm delighted to say, looking at this labyrinth website just yesterday, I found that already they have been sharing their labyrinths with the public as part of World Labyrinth Day. And the labyrinth is also the site of an annual memorial service to which family and friends are also invited. You'll see at the bottom that there is information there, very, very specific directions on how to find the labyrinth. So this gives you a flavour, friends, of two very different resources that I hope you will make use of to deepen, enrich, share ideas, get you started, discover more. And having taken that time, I'm going to hand over to Lars, which means that there's now an opportunity for you to take a deep breath and have a stretch and break into discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Lars.
Well, thank you, Jan, and thank you to all of our presenters. It's really incredible to see so many different perspectives on the use and creation of labyrinths and universities and higher education colleges. Before we break into our groups, I just wanted to share the Veritas Higher Education page, which is on our website at veritas.org. /higher-ed-initiative. So I just put this into the chat. And you can see here is where we have the past webinars that we have presented. So you can watch these as well as download resources. And we have different themes and presenters for our past work, and also the book and index that Jan just mentioned, as well as further resources on research from the Labyrinth Society and Labyrinths and Universities and Colleges, originally the index hosted on the Labyrinth Society website, which is in the process of being updated. So, and then just some general information about labyrinths that could be helpful to share. So, well, I did want to mention World Labyrinth Day, which is coming up. It's always on the first Saturday of May every year. So this year that's May 4th. And it's a great thing to do on campus if it can fit into your campus schedule. And it's also nice to combine, Labyrinth events with other events on campus and things of that nature throughout the year. So
I think we should also mention World Labyrinth Day in educational settings, which is held on Friday before World Labyrinth Day, focused particularly on schools and across all levels. And the Australian Labyrinth Network has a vast array of resources to help folks with planning that type of an event.
Thanks, Susie. I also want to, if you offer you an invitation, if any of you are interested in connecting with our higher ed initiative. We meet on the second Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific. And at this point, we're an open group. Our panelists all came from that group. And if you are interested in joining us, you can email myself or Lars at dawn@veritas.org or Lars@veritas.org, and feel free to join us and for a little more in-depth sharing about what it is you're doing and where you'd like to go. Just want to thank you all for coming and thank the panelists from the bottom of my heart for their amazing contribution.